All right, this should work. Hey, this is Andy Revkin, the Sustain What webcast, doing a special pop-up version with Marshall Curry, Academy Award-winning filmmaker, who is at Madison Square Garden in there right now because he's making a film on a Netflix film following some New Yorker journalists who are there. But Marshall is better known in this context for having made a film some years ago called A Day in the Garden.
Night at the Garden.
Night at the Garden. Thank you. I have him on audio here because the signal is very bad. So I'm going to show you his website in a second. But this is just to give you a sense of, I'm using the live webcast from PBS to give you a sense of what's going on the podium. Rudy Giuliani, former mayor of New York, just gave a pretty powerful speech from the standpoint of the Trump campaign. And Marshall, can you just talk a little bit right now about why you're there, what you're seeing, and then a little bit about your film and how this sort of makes you think about what you did a few years ago with that film?
Sure. So a little background. I guess about 7 years ago, I came across some footage of a Nazi rally from 1939 that filled Madison Square Garden. And it was sort of fragments of old black and white footage that an archival researcher found in the National Archives and in UCLA's archive and Grinberg archive. And we found, assorted pieces of this night. And when I watched it, I was pretty shaken by it. It sort of gives you this sense of, viewing an alternate reality where the Nazis won World War II, because the rally itself is, it was billed as a pro-America rally. There are about 20,000 New Yorkers gather to sing the Star Spangled Banner and say the Pledge of Allegiance, and they're waving American flags, and there's a huge 40-foot portrait of George Washington, but on either side of him are swastikas, and the speaker calls for a white Gentile-controlled United States, and it's very strange to see 20,000 New Yorkers offer the stiff-arm salute. So when I saw that footage, I was really kind of shaken by it and turned it into a 7-minute all-archival sort of mini documentary, very short documentary that just sort of drops people into the rally that night. And my hope was that it would challenge Americans to remember that we are not immune from the temptations and lures of demagogues.
Right.
And, it's possible for us to get sucked into hatred and, nasty divisions and anti-immigrant, racist, anti-Semitic frenzies as well. And so that came out 7 years ago. And a lot of people compared it to a Trump rally. Trump had just been elected when the film came out. And to be clear, I never intended and still don't think that Trump is a Nazi.
Right.
But I do think he's a demagogue, and I do think that he uses a lot of these same tactics that demagogues have used for thousands of years to kind of stir people up against each other and grab power in the process. So when Trump announced that he was going to have a rally in Madison Square Garden, I was intrigued and thought I should come check it out for myself. So that's why I'm here.
Right. And just describe a little bit what you've been seeing so far. I'm going to show some clips of it later.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. I've watched clips from Trump rallies before, and it is different when you're here. There's just a different feeling to be physically among thousands and thousands of people who think that America is a terrible place that is full of rampant violence and crime, and that the government is horrible, and that their only savior is this man. And I don't know, I have to say, it's been a little unsettling. And I have friends who are Trump supporters. I have family members who are Trump supporters.
Same here.
and yet when there's 20,000 of them together, and they just are cheering for just this kind of vision of America that feels completely unlike the America that I see, and that, you know, any sort of statistics would tell you crime is massively down. You know, inflation is, you know, has come down. That sure, there are problems, but boy, the darkness of the music and the darkness of all of the images that are playing between speeches and the speeches themselves is, it's amazing to see how dark they view America, and how that seems like it sets them up to be attracted to a strong man who says he's going to fix everything and take care of everything for them.
Yeah, I'm showing now on my screen. I was struck by a line in Giuliani's speech where he says, they won't let a Palestinian into Jordan. They won't let a Palestinian into Egypt. And Harris wants to bring them to you. They may have good people. I'm sorry, I don't take a risk with people who are taught to kill Americans at 2 years old. Again, for friends of mine who are liberals who are thinking of not voting for Harris, I kind of am highlighting that just to think about that level of exclusionary passion.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes it's easy to forget that Donald Trump literally ran for president, jetted to the front of the Republican pack, because he said he was going to completely ban Muslims from coming into the United States.
Right.
I feel like that's been forgotten because, you know, in the end, he wasn't able to accomplish it. But that was his number one policy that he ran on in 2016, was picking a religious minority and saying, these people are not going to be allowed to come into our country because of their religion.
Right.
Like, it's so clear, and that, you know, I feel like liberals, we try to like understand what the, you know, what's the concern behind the policy, and I think that's a good instinct, and I think that is important and valuable to understand economic frustrations and cultural frustrations and things like that. But I also think it's important not to kind of sane wash and whitewash some of the truly grotesque policies that Donald Trump has proposed. And, you know, again, I don't think Donald Trump is a Nazi.
Right.
I don't think most of his supporters are you know, racist deplorables. But I also think that when the people who know him best say that he has fascist tendencies, his chief of staff, the Joint Chiefs, you know, two-time Trump voter, Republican stalwart, Liz Cheney, you know, sort of over and over. Even his own vice president is not supporting him for president because he thinks that he put himself over the Constitution.
Right.
Like, just think about that for a minute, how extraordinary that is, that the vice president who served with him is not supporting him because he says he put himself over the Constitution. And it's weird because when you start to point these things out, it makes you start to sound like you're unhinged for pointing them out. But it's I don't know. It's a tough position to be in.
Yeah.
To see a real danger and figure out how to express that danger without sounding panicky and overwrought.
Right. And what are you seeing around you generally? You know, you were in line earlier with some of the crew, and were you talking to people and getting a sense of their
and again, like, most of the people are the people who you go to see a Jets game with. Like,
Sure.
They're funny, they're having pizza, they're talking to each other, they're goofing around, they're laughing. These are normal people that are just like us. They're just like our family members, they're just like our friends. And yet I feel like I and they and we all have, you know, good sides and bad sides. We have dark passions, and we have you know, generous sides, and we're susceptible to having charismatic, funny, you know, theatrical leaders stir up our dark passions. And I feel like that's what Donald Trump does.
Yeah, I just want to introduce folks to you one more time. Marshall Curry is a longtime filmmaker, won an Academy Award for the short film category a number of years back, and had done a film about the 1939 rally at Madison Square Garden at the time when America was getting toward World War II, and Nazism was spreading in the United States. Again, he's made clear here in this conversation today, he doesn't think Trump is a Nazi, and that the passions of most of the people here and around the MAGA universe are not evil per se, but there are some pretty disturbing trends going on. So maybe you could just say a little bit more about what you're seeing right now.
Yeah, it's I guess the thing that's the most striking is just the dark view of America. And it's they've been showing between the speakers, they've been showing trailers of movies and documentaries, I guess. Some, none of them that I recognize, which maybe says something about my liberal bubble, or I don't know. But they are, and every single one of them, it plays like a horror movie of just like immigrant violence and evil fascistic Democrats who are destroying things, and there's one strong person who can take it back. And just the way that the sound effects and the music feel, there's a drama to it that is stirring people, and I can feel it myself when I'm sitting there. And so I think that's maybe why I sound the way that I do. I'm usually much more maybe measured in the way I express myself, but it's quite something to say. 20,000 people just rally around a man who uses the most dark, hateful policies and uses the most dark and hateful and divisive rhetoric about American citizens that I've ever seen.
Wow. And this is spilling into the advertising universe, of course, through tens of millions of dollars, and on Twitter, of course, through Elon Musk, who will be there sometime momentarily, probably. It gets amplified further. And, everyone is using storytelling and alarm and trying to use a mixture of fear and temptation to get people to vote. But this does feel particularly intense, I'm sure. It's a strange feeling. As a filmmaker, you're all about narrative and what is it you think provides that connection for people who are stressed out or feeling like their lives are not going well?
I don't know. I mean, I've been sitting here and just thinking over and over, like, did we do this? Is it does the left have the equivalent of this? And I don't know. I mean, I watched the Democratic convention, and it seemed like the videos were, farmers and patriotism and visions of America that looked like pickup truck commercials and pride and people coming together, and this diverse group of people slapping each other on the backs, and it's so strange to see kind of the inverse of that. I really don't think it's it's the same. I don't know.
Yeah.
It'll take me some digesting.
Well, but, one thing that I think I saw some coverage of the analysis of advertising by both campaigns, and Trump's is, I don't think there is a positive ad out there, at least unless there's something that has come up in the last 24 hours. It really is the closing message. Everyone talks about the closing message of campaigns around this time, and his closing message seems to be stuck on the the no's
Yeah.
and the fear part, and not so much the here's what I'm going to do part, unless I'm missing something.
It's resentment and it's fear. I mean, I have to say, like, I truly don't think that there's an equivalent to having people take a stage and say, we're going to make liberals cry again. I don't know what. I'd love to know, is there a Democratic equivalent of that? Like,
Yeah.
Democrats don't like Trump by all, clearly. And they would celebrate if he lost, but
Right.
I don't think that there's an equivalent. And I know people would point to the line about deplorables, but the truth about that line was that Hillary Clinton was saying, if you listen to what she said, she was saying, yes, there's a group of Trump supporters who are deplorables, but most of them are driven by economic insecurity and other normal cultural challenges. Like, literally, the point she was making was the opposite.
I wonder how much of that is a function of the Democrats essentially being a pretty wide coalition that they have to hold together, including former some Republican moderates, etc. So it's harder to come across as purely us and them when you're in a position where you have your whole kind of coalition is about partnerships that can be reluctant.
Maybe it doesn't. To be honest, though, it doesn't feel that tactical to me. It feels natural. Like, it feels like that's what liberals want. Like, they want a.
Oh, hold on, and I just realized I was muted there. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Let me say that because I think the audience couldn't hear me. I was muted.
Oh, the last thing. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, Marshall Curry, filmmaker, Oscar winner, documentarian extraordinaire. You were on my show. You were on my blog a long time ago at the New York Times, and you're here now making a film about some reporters who were at the event. And thanks for your time. This is such a momentous juncture for this country, and there'll be more to talk about going forward. And I look forward to having you back on Sustain What sometime, perhaps.
Thanks so much. Yeah, and if people are interested in watching that, the Night at the Garden, they can go to anightatthegarden.com.
Oh, yes. Thank you for mentioning that. I was going to show that on screen too. In fact, sure. I can. Hold on one second. I'm going to. Yeah, it's anightatthegarden.com. You can see, and folks can kind of replay this video when you're done watching it live and catch the details. anightatthegarden.com. That was in what year?
1939.
No, I mean that you made it. It was released.
2017, I guess.
2017, yeah, and an extraordinary, another extraordinary moment in American history, captured on video that just resurfaced. Film that resurfaced that you were able to restore. So thanks again, and have an interesting evening.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
So that was a live conversation with Marshall Curry, who was on the floor at the convention, haha, the event at Madison Square Garden. Donald Trump will be there shortly on stage. It's a tumultuous time. There's lots of ways to interpret what's going on. I hope you'll catch Marshall's work, marshallcurry.com, and that documentary he mentioned about 1939 in Madison Square Garden. You know, there's some similarities in the rhetoric. There's a lot of differences in our country, but at the same time, it's a slippery slope into some very bizarre possibilities and troubling ones for this country. I'm going to stop there and make sure you vote. Boy, that's never been more important. Register your vote, your voice, so we can all get beyond the rhetoric and the attempts to spin us and anger us and divide us, and move forward with the vision of a democracy that's inclusive and representative. And oh, here comes Steve Miller, speaking of non-inclusive and non-representative futures for this country. I'm not going to, you can watch this anywhere, but this was just a brief pop-up opportunity with Marshall Curry, who's there shooting film at the event for a future documentary series. I'm Andy Revkin, and I'm going to call it there.